I just saved my client $80,000 by walking away from what looked like their dream Chicago condo. So let me tell you what I saw that they didn't. Look, I'm not here to tell you what to buy in Chicago. There's tons of other videos out there about that on YouTube. I'm here to tell you about the 5 types of properties you should not buy in Chicago. And the sad part is most buyers have no idea until it's too late. I've been selling real estate in Chicago for 12 years, and it's too bad that I see so many good people losing tons of money by not knowing that these red flags exist. With everyone's property search starting online these days, some of these properties just seem too good to be true, and they don't actually show or reveal the true issues that are lying hidden in these condos and in these properties. What I want to help avoid is you buying a property and then 6 months later, you realizing that there is water seepage in the block on the side of the building, the roof is leaking, and now you have astronomical special assessments that are being passed on to you. You can't sell the property and you're just wondering what the hell happened. So if you're thinking about buying in Chicago in 2026, keep watching because I'm going to show you in this video how to avoid the 5 pitfalls of the types of properties here that are going to cost you a ton of money down the road and are going to cause you a ton of financial headache. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jordan Pyle and I'm your go-to Chicago real estate agent. My team and I have serviced the city for the last 12 years and we'd be honored to help you as well. If you're thinking about buying a home or selling a home here and you want to get in touch with our team, feel free to just text the number on the screen and a team member or myself will get in touch within 24 hours. So before we get into the details of the video, I've noticed a lot of you that follow my videos and come back every single week with our new videos. You are not yet subscribed to the channel. I would love for you if you could do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. Comment down below any questions you have, like this, and definitely share this with a friend if it's valuable for you today. All right, so here's the reality nobody tells you. While Chicago has some of the most beautiful architecture in the world, you have stunning vintage buildings, incredible neighborhoods, and properties that look like absolute gems. But Chicago also has specific property types that come with hidden nightmares. We're gonna talk about 5 of those today. These are issues that won't necessarily show up in a standard home inspection. Maybe there's problems that sellers conveniently forget to mention, and structural issues that can cost you 6 figures to fix. Nobody wants that. I'm talking about properties that flood every time with heavy rain, buildings with mold hiding behind the walls, units that are literally impossible to sell for various reasons we'll get into in this video, and then homes that hemorrhage money over special assessments in places where the noise will drive you absolutely insane, aka being by the L. We'll talk about that. And the worst part is that many of these homes look completely fine when you're touring them, and even more when you're looking at them online. So here are the 5 types of properties that you're gonna need to approach with extreme caution. I'll explain exactly what to look for, the types of questions to ask, why certain things are problematic, and if you must buy one, how to make sure you're protecting yourself. All right, let's get into it with number 1 property to avoid. The number 1 property to avoid is a garden unit, and this is pretty much, there's very rare circumstances where I'll actually recommend somebody buy this. And if you don't know what a garden unit is, it's basically a basement or a below grade apartment unit. And in Chicago, these are actually everywhere, especially in neighborhoods like Lincoln Park, Lakeview, Wicker Park, and Bucktown. They're also usually the cheapest in a building, which makes them super attractive to first-time buyers and investors. But here's what nobody is actually going to tell you up front about them. Problem number 1 is natural light is almost non-existent. Garden units are below ground level, as I talked about, so your windows, if you even have them, are at sidewalk level or below. You're looking at people's feet walking by and you're staring at concrete. The result is that your unit is super dark and honestly, it feels pretty miserable when you walk in. And it feels like you're living in a cave. But here's the kicker. When you go to sell, buyers are gonna walk in and immediately feel depressed. Dark spaces don't photograph well, they don't show well, and ultimately they don't just sell well. So if you're thinking about buying a garden unit, you definitely wanna think about long-term resaleability. And that leads us into problem number 2. Resale value is terrible. Garden units have the worst resale track record of any property type in Chicago, and that is period, hard stop. Why? Because your buyer pool is tiny. I honestly usually avoid, as I did in this video, buyers from pursuing garden units for the other reasons we're gonna talk about in this section. Most people just don't want to live in a basement for one. Families with kids, that doesn't really work. People who work from home and need a lot of natural light, nope, that's gonna rule them out. And then anyone concerned about safety or privacy, that also doesn't work for them. So you're stuck selling to first-time buyers or investors, and even they are hesitant because they know that they're going to have the same problems as you when they go to sell down the road. I've seen garden units sit on the market for 6 to 12 months while identical units on the second floor sell in 2 weeks or less. And that's just the reality. And the biggest headache that you want to avoid with garden units is problem number 3, which is that the flooding risk is super real. Here's the big one. Chicago gets heavy rain and we get flash floods. We get rapid snow melt in the spring. And guess what happens when the water has nowhere to go? It finds the lowest point, which ultimately ends up being your home, aka your garden unit. I've seen units with 2 inches of standing water after a storm. I've seen ruined hardwood floors, destroyed furniture, and mold growing behind the walls within 48 hours. You absolutely want to avoid this. Even if the building has a sump pump, those also fail sometimes. Drains are gonna back up, sewers overflow, and when you're below grade, you're the first one flooded. And one thing to notice here is if you are buying a garden unit, you definitely want to get a sewer scope. There's a ton of trees in Chicago, and a lot of times trees can infiltrate into the water pipes under the building, the sewer pipes, and they can lead to blockage, which then leads to water backups. And when you're in a garden unit, yours is typically the unit that is going to flood because that's where the sump pump is and everything's gonna go straight into your unit. So talking about those 3 problems, should you even consider buying a garden unit? So what I'll say is, look, if you're getting an absolute steal, and I'm talking 30, 40, 50% below market value for a comparable above grade unit, and you're planning to live there short term, and maybe you're an investor, you might want to consider it. But you really need to make sure to get that sewer scope we're talking about. You want to check the building's flooding history, and this is something you can do by asking neighbors. You can check the city records. You can reach out to your agent and have them poke around to some of their agent friends and other properties in the area and see if they have any history or know of any history of it flooding. And you're just gonna wanna budget for things that may come up. Lastly, you're just gonna need to come to grips that resale may be a challenge when you go to sell one day. So if you're going to buy this unit, I would highly advise you hold on to it long term, and hopefully you don't get a lemon because it could cost you thousands and thousands of dollars over the years, even if you're an investor and you're renting the property out. So for most buyers, I would just say skip it. The savings just aren't worth the headaches. All right, property type number 2 that you want to avoid buying, or at least take extra due diligence and caution, are properties that are near the L or that they back up to the L. So if you've never lived in Chicago, the L is our elevated train system. It's iconic, it's convenient, it's also loud as hell. I'm talking about shake your windows, rattle your dishes, can't hear your TV loud. And here's what happens. Buyers tour a property at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday when trains are running every 15 minutes. And it doesn't seem that bad. It's like, oh, it's just a little background noise and I can get used to this. Then they move in and realize that the trains actually run way more often during rush hour. And they run until midnight, they run starting at 5 a.m. And it's not just the noise, it's the vibration, the screeching metal, and the feeling that a train is literally about to drive through your living room. The big problem number 1 with units that are either backing up to the L or close to the train lines is that the noise is going to just drive you insane. I had a client who bought a beautiful 2-bedroom in Bucktown about 50 feet from the blue line. It had gorgeous finishes, great price, and they loved the location. However, 3 months later, she called me in tears talking about how she can't sleep, she can't work from home, and she can't have conversations when she's entertaining guests when the trains are going by. She tried soundproofing, noise machines, nothing really worked. She ended up selling at a loss after 6 months because she literally couldn't take it anymore. And when she went to sell 6 months later, she realized that it's going to be an uphill battle because most people, like what she has now realized, aren't really favorable of a property that is that close to the train line for all the reasons that we just talked about. And that's why problem number 2 is that resale is a nightmare. And just like the garden units, your buyer pool just shrinks dramatically. Most people don't want to live next to the train. Parents with young kids is not going to work. Remote workers that are working from home, that's not gonna work because you're gonna have Zoom calls and you're gonna have trains going by, hitting pause, hitting mute, mid-sentence to make sure that the train is going by and it's not disrupting your work call. And anyone that just values peace and quiet, it's just not gonna work. You're just gonna sit on the market longer, get fewer offers, and likely have to drop your price to remain competitive. Those are the main reasons I'd avoid buying a property near the L. But what if you find that amazing deal and you're considering a property near? You just want to make sure that you're going to visit at different times, right? You're going to want to see the property in the morning during rush hour, evening rush hour, late night, and then maybe even also on the weekends. Also, what you want to do as a little hack is if there's a balcony or if you can open a window, which hopefully you can, you're going to want to sit there and wait for the train to pass by. You want to hear what it sounds like with all the windows and doors closed. And then maybe if you have a window propped or the balcony door open, you want to also hear what it sounds like that. Because sometimes, depending on the windows and the soundproofing, it actually isn't too bad. Other times, it is a dramatic difference. You're gonna wish you had done this. And also, if you're considering one and you feel like it's a great deal, just ask your realtor, somebody like myself, to look at comparable units, see what type of discount these properties are selling at, just so that you have that information that you can factor into your equation. All right, the third type of property you want to maybe avoid are split-face block buildings. And this is something that you've probably heard. There's a huge stigma around split-face block in Chicago, and here's some reasons why. And also some things that you may be able to do to mitigate this, or at least do your diligence to know what you're walking into. And when we talk about split face, this is a specific type of block or a material that builders were building with in usually like the late 1990s to early 2000s. And the honest truth is that most neighborhoods like Bucktown, Wicker Park, Lakeview, Chicago, even Old Town, a lot of the neighborhoods that our team sell in, a lot of these buildings were actually built in the late 1990s or early 2000s. So this is something we run into often. And this is also something that if you're not from Chicago or you're not a realtor like me, you may not even have ever heard of something like this. And sometimes this can be sneaky, right? Because sometimes the front of the building is going to be all brick, the back of the building is going to be all brick, but you need to check the sides of the building. Usually that's where you're going to find the split face block. Sometimes you see it on the front, the back, and the sides, but a lot of times builders, to kind of make it look like a nicer build, they'll put the brick on the front, the brick on the back, and then on the sides will be the split face. So you just want to take special care and attention to this. So the reason split face block is bad, it is very porous. So if you look at a picture of split face block, I'll have it put on the screen here in the editing process so that you can just understand and easily be able to identify. And so split face block requires a sealing of the split face every 5 to 7-ish years, depending on the type of seal that has been done in the past. And so what happens if you go too long without sealing? Sometimes the seal will start to wear off and then you'll have water damage and water seepage into the block. As soon as the water seepage gets into the block, it is an absolute nightmare. You're gonna have mold starting to grow. This can seep further into the drywall and the units of the property that are butting up and adjacent to the block itself. And it just is a huge disaster. And really there's no way to avoid this once the damage starts. And so when you're looking at properties that have split face block, the number one thing I want you to ask the seller or the seller's agent is, when was the last time the block was sealed? Has there been any water intrusion in the block in the past? And you want to pay very, very close attention to the meeting minutes so that you can go through and see what type of history this building has. Because like I said before, it may be perfectly fine today, but if this damage had occurred in the past, it may create issues that are not going to show up immediately, but 6, 12, 18 months down the road could cause huge headaches and nightmares. And you want to pay special attention to the meeting minutes and the advice of your trusted real estate professional, because I've toured units where the owner says that there's never been any water damage, but you can literally see the water stains on the ceiling. Maybe you smell mold in the walls, or just when you walk into the property, you can smell the mold. So the main problem here, problem number 2, is that special assessments can get catastrophic. Here's what gets really expensive. To fix the split face block issues, you can't just patch the walls. You need to seal the entire exterior of the building, which could cost tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands. You have to remediate mold inside the units. You have to replace damaged drywall, insulation, and sometimes even the studs. And you need to install proper waterproof systems. These special assessments can run $20,000, $40,000, even $60,000 per unit. It's just something you're gonna want to avoid. Problem number 3, with split face blocks, some buyers won't even look at them. Split face has such a bad reputation, as I mentioned before, in Chicago, that some buyers and even some agents won't even tour properties that are built with it. So it's an automatic deal breaker. That means when you go to sell, you're immediately cutting out a huge portion of potential buyers before they even see your place. So how do you protect yourself? So if you're looking at a property and you suspect split face block construction, here's your due diligence checklist. First, ask the right questions. When was the exterior last sealed? Has there ever been water infiltration or mold issues in this unit or the building? Are there any upcoming or past special assessments related to exterior work? The specific words I use are, there any current, pending, or anticipated special assessments? And maybe there are, maybe it's not due to this, but you just want to ask the question. And then when you go under contract, you're going to want to make sure you get the HOA meeting minutes. You're going to run to review those with a fine-tooth comb. So my honest take on split face block is that if the building has been properly maintained over time, it's been recently sealed, and there's no history of water issues, you might be okay. But you need to go with an eyes wide open approach. Most of the times I tell my clients to avoid it. However, there are so many circumstances and so many different things you want to take into consideration. It's definitely not a one size fits all. A lot of times these buildings and these units make sense for my buyers. Other times they don't. So just use your discretion, and you can always rely on me to help advise you in this process. All right, the 4th type of property you want to avoid in Chicago are homes with old mechanicals or systems. Properties with major systems or near the end of their useful life. This one applies to single-family homes, condos, as well as townhomes. And it's something a lot of buyers overlook because they're focused on the pretty finishes and the layout. But here's the truth. If the mechanicals and the major systems are old, you're about to inherit a massive expense. What we talked about before is that a lot of these buildings that a lot of my buyers look at are 20, 25, even 30 years old. So HVAC systems, like your furnace and your air conditioning, you typically have a 15 to 20 year lifespan, but a lot of times they can last longer. So if you're thinking about buying a property that's built late 1990s, early 2000s, or even like 2010, you're coming up at the end of this useful life, and you just want to make sure that it's operating properly. If you do have any issues during the inspection, you could probably negotiate some credits and things like that. But as long as it's in operational condition at the time of the inspection, you cannot ask a seller to actually replace it or to give you credit for it. So you just want to know, and you can do things like home warranties to protect yourself against this, but you just want to know what you're working for and budget accordingly. So I'm just going to run through a few of these life expectancies and these useful lives so that you understand what we're talking about. As I mentioned, HVAC systems, furnace, AC, about 15 to 20 years. Water heaters, somewhere between 8 and 15 years, depending on the type and the size. Roofs, 20 to 30 year lifespan, depending on the material. Windows, 20 to 30 year lifespan. Plumbing, 50 to 70 years for copper, but older galvanized pipes can fail sooner. Electrical panels, 25 to 40 years. And pay close attention to these because some of these are against code nowadays for inspectors. And exterior components such as the ceiling of the block or tuck pointing of the brick. You also want to pay attention to the back porches and stairwells. If any of these are 20 plus years old and haven't been replaced or properly maintained, you might be walking into a money pit. So problem number one is that the replacement costs are huge. We just talked about how long some of these things last, but a new HVAC system could run you between $8,000 and $15,000. A new water heater between $1,500 and $3,000. A new roof, $10,000, $30,000 plus, depending on the size. Sometimes, obviously, this is going to be shared with other units. Usually it is if you're in a condo. New windows for the whole house could be $10,000, $25,000 plus. Electrical panel upgrade, 2 to 4K. Plumbing repairs, $5,000 to $15,000 plus. New back porch and stairwell, maybe $10,000 to $30,000 plus. So if you're buying a property where multiple systems are at the end of life, you could be looking at a massive bill down the road. So you either just want to be savvy in a negotiation and figure out how to offset some of these potential liabilities down the road, or just make sure that you're budgeting and you're getting the property at the right price so that you can budget for these in the future. The reality is with this is there's a lot of properties, as I mentioned, that have older mechanicals or older towards the end of useful life. And so my best advice is to make sure, as I just talked about, that you're budgeting for this, that we're exploring home warranties. We're asking the seller how often these have been serviced, and if they're on a regular service interval, that could be good for you and it could buy you some time and some money. And just things like that we're gonna get a better overall picture. And it's just one element that you want to consider in your actual thought process of buying this property. It's not an end all be all. A lot of times I advise buyers that, hey, this is your decision, and I agree that this is a beautiful property. And as long as you're willing, for example, to replace the AC and the furnace in the next few years for somewhere between $8,000 to $12,000, maybe $15,000, and that's a budget expense that you're okay paying, then I would say go ahead and move forward with the unit. If there's a lot of things that add up, for example, it's an old roof, the block hasn't been sealed, you have a really old falling apart back stairwell and porch, and the AC and the furnace are old, and maybe even the water heater, maybe you want to avoid it if it's got this whole stack of things that may be old in the property. But if it's just one or two, we can oftentimes get around those, or at least provide enough security and kind of thought process into this to make sure you're protected. All right, so the last type of property in Chicago you want to avoid are old buildings with high HOA fees. So older condo buildings or co-op buildings in Chicago with sky-high HOA fees often lead or have a ton of deferred maintenance. And this is the silent killer of Chicago real estate deals. And it's something that catches a lot of buyers off guard. So here's the scenario. You're gonna find a gorgeous vintage condo in a beautiful building. The unit is updated, the location's perfect, the price seems reasonable, but then you see that the HOA fee is $800 a month, maybe $1,200, $1,500, or even $2,500 plus per month. And that's just crazy, and that eats completely into your affordability. And you may think, okay, that's fine, but maybe it includes everything like the heat, the water, the parking, and the amenities. But then you move, and in 6 months, you get hit with a $30,000 special assessment notice because the building not only has high assessments, but now you have a $30,000 special assessment to keep up with deferred maintenance. So what just happened there? You bought into an old building with years of deferred maintenance and a broke HOA, even though the unit, the location, and everything else seemed to be a dream come true. The hidden killers were behind the scenes. And when you're buying into a condo building, you're not only buying the unit, you're buying the whole building. and you want to make sure that it's financially sound, that they're taking care of things on a regular maintenance, and they're not deferring things down the road, because that could become a headache for you when the seller says, hey, there's no issues right now, there's no special assessments, and then the next thing you know is in the meeting minutes or down the road, they add a huge project onto the docket, and it's going to cost you upwards of $20,000, $30,000 per unit when that special assessment hits. And the reality in Chicago is that older buildings are everywhere, especially those buildings built in the early 1900s to the 1960s, and they require constant upkeep. And we're talking about tuck pointing, roof replacements, elevator modernization, boiler and heating system replacements, facade repairs, plumbing and electrical upgrades, and even window replacements. If the HOA has been ignoring these issues or kicking the can down the road, the building is a ticking time bomb. And guess who pays when things finally break? Yes, you guessed it, you. And as we talked about before, the high HOAs and the special assessments lead to an affordability crisis. So let's just say you buy a $300,000 condo with a $900 monthly HOA fee. Your mortgage might be $1,800 a month. So with your HOA, you're about $2,700 a month total. Then you get hit with a $40,000 special assessment because you need a new roof and new facade work on the building. If you don't have $40K cash, you're taking out a loan or you're paying it over time, adding another $400 to $500 a month to your payment, and now you're at $3,100 to $3,200 per month. That's 35% higher than your original budget. So the question becomes, can you afford that now, and can the next buyer afford that when you go and try to sell? And the last thing here is that your resale value tanks when you run into a deferred maintenance building or a building like this with high HOAs. High HOA fees and recent special assessments are huge red flags for buyers. So when your unit hits the market, buyers are gonna see that, oh, $950 a month HOA fee. They're immediately gonna click to the next one, or they're even worse, they're gonna set their filter, or the realtor is, for anything that they're looking at with a HOA under $600 or $700 per month, depending on the buyer. So you may not even come up in a search because the HOAs are so high. And also for special assessments, which are absolutely the worst and could be the most catastrophic, buyers assume that if there's recent special assessments, there might be more coming down the pipeline. So this is ultimately gonna lead to a smaller buyer pool, drastically shrinking the amount of buyers that are looking for this type of property. Your offer is gonna come in lower, and your unit is gonna sit on the market for a longer period of time. My best advice with this is review the HOA financials really, really carefully. And this is going to be a team effort between yourself, your agent, as well as your attorney. You're gonna wanna look at the last 2 to 3 years of HOA budgets, the reserve funds in the building, a list of past special assessments, meeting minutes. You wanna specifically look for discussions of deferred repairs, and then red flags. Maybe this is reserve fund is under 10% of the annual budget. There's multiple special assessments coming in the recent years or in the past recent years. The meeting minutes discuss emergency repairs or urgent needs. Maybe you have delinquent HOA dues, or even litigation in the building, AKA lawsuits. All of these things could just add up to become a complete disaster for you. So this would be the 5th type of property that I would either avoid or just pay very close attention and do your extra due diligence on before you buy it here in Chicago. All right, so let's recap the 5 types of Chicago properties you need to approach with extreme caution. Number 1, garden units. Number 2, properties near the L, AKA the train. 3, split-face block buildings. 4, homes with old mechanicals or old appliances and different types of deferred maintenance. And then old buildings with high HOA fees and deferred maintenance is number 5. So look, I'm not saying you should never buy these types of properties, but if you do, or if you're considering, you need to do your extensive due diligence. You need to budget for the worst case scenario. You need to accept that resale might be difficult, and you need to get everything in writing when you go under contract. The reality is Chicago has thousands of amazing properties that don't come with any of these red flags, properties that will appreciate and that you'll love living in and that you can actually sell when the time comes. So why risk it? And so before you decide to buy a property in Chicago this year, definitely watch this video, replay it, go back, maybe take a little list, ask your real estate agent, or even better, our team about these every single time you walk into a property. Make sure you know the right types of questions to ask, the types of financials and documents to review to ensure that your financial investment here in Chicago is looked after and you're making a smart financial decision. So that's it for today. I hope you found this information valuable. If so, please share this with a friend, like the video, comment any questions you have down below. I covered a lot here, but I definitely didn't cover everything. And be sure to hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications so you can catch all of our future videos. Also, I didn't mention this earlier, but if you want information about Chicago, you're not yet ready to reach out to our team, but you just want to be in the know every 2 weeks about what's happening in all things Chicago. We have a free bi-weekly newsletter sent straight to your inbox. You can find the link down in the description below. There's absolutely no obligation. You can unsubscribe anytime, and we would love to see you there or on our next video. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you soon. All right, peace.